Jen, welcome. I'm Samantha. My name is Ruby.
I'm Natalia.
Jeremy?
And here's the chair.
I'm the chair,
Okay, we have a vice chair.
right here.
Okay.
Ruby.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so I guess we'll turn the floor over to you, Jen.
Okay.
And you can go ahead and do your thing.
Well, thank you very much for having me tonight. I know that we have a couple of these scheduled and we're going to bit, and hopefully we don't overwhelm you too quickly. We'll piece this out a little bit. So tonight's going to be more about the foundations of our board government essentials. I know that we have 3 newer board members. So I just want to make sure that we can cover some of those things before we start having conversations about communication protocols and board operating agreements and board superintendent operating agreements the next time. And then the last time we get together, we're going to kind of tie all that into the process of the superintendent evaluation and your roles in that, and just kind of talk about that a little bit more. My name is Jen Nelson. I am a board development specialist and an executive search consultant with OSBA. Prior to coming to OSBA, I served for about 20 years as a board clerk. So I sat on the sidelines and I kind of whispered things about how we should be doing stuff on the sidelines. And now I get to be up here in front, kind of sharing all the things I've learned over 20 years with different boards, city councils, school boards. It's all kind of the same, but a little bit different in the work. So it's been kind of interesting to see that as we go along. I have, most of my work has been in Yamhill County, so I have served in Carlton, City of Carlton. I was their recorder there. A lot of things that I've gotten experience with as far as those dynamics and partnerships between smaller communities and the schools and the city councils and those different things. So I have a lot of experience with that. And also know, and I can also say that I do understand a little bit about smaller communities and how board members can wear different hats and how you're seen a little bit more out there because everybody who's in town kind of knows you. And their smaller districts tend to focus all of the things around the community and the schools. So there's a lot of visibility there. So I do recognize that. And I also know that there's a lot of work on your shoulders too, other than your day jobs. And it's highly paid when you do the evenings. So just to give you a little bit of background, our goal tonight is to go ahead and connect those big governance kind of things with small town and rural districts and hopefully make some connections that are more related to you and not so abstract. So let me go ahead and see where I am here. You already gave me your names, and I did I love that you guys have a get to know me on your website so you can read a little bit about where you come from. So I did actually kind of get some of these answers, but I just want to hear them from you to see what you share. You're right. So you already shared your names. You told me, a little bit about yourself, but if you could just tell me why you joined the board, and also if you attended high school here or somewhere else. That's always fun to know. I think I was reading somewhere. Go ahead.
I guess I'll start. So I joined the board last July, whichever one it was. So I've only been on for a few months. I didn't attend school here. I went to Dallas High School and I went to Jefferson High School is where I graduated. So both smaller schools. I'm on the board mostly because my kids, today, but I had homeschooled them at first and I wanted them in public school because I went back to finish my own. And so having them in public school, I was like, I really want to be involved in their learning. I want to know what's going on. So I would rather be engaged and there to see and be able to change what's there. So that's what we're working on.
Thank you.
And I went to high school in Dayton, so just down the road. And I joined the board, loved me to the community, and I wanted to get back and connected to Lori with my previous job, where I got to facilitate meetings in every school district catchment area of Yamhill County, and so I was able to Lori and some other staff members, and yeah.
Let's see, I've been on the board since 2019, right before the pandemic hit. That was fun. I was appointed to the board in a vacant seat, and then I re-ran when the term came and got elected. And I'm on my second term being elected, and my final term. I just made that very clear. It's not a bad thing being on the board. It just has taken a lot of time over the years, and I feel like I've given my time. So I attended high school here at Sheridan, graduated in 2001, and yeah, senior class president, all the fun things. I love the school with every bone in my body, and that's one of the reasons I ran. My children were coming up in the school, and I just wanted to be part of it. I wanted to be an advocate on every level I possibly could be. I had been approached years before to join the board, but I just wasn't there yet. Still having children then. And yeah, so anytime I'm on the board, my wife has probably changed since I've been on the board. My children don't attend school here anymore. But I do feel a responsibility to the community as an elected official, and a responsibility to the rest of the board to help train them, to get them ready to take over when me and Ruby step away, especially as newbies. Yeah, I really am passionate about this district.
That's great.
Yeah.
Ruby, did you, I saw you on your head, is this also going to be yours?
Yes, I'm hoping to move out of this school district area.
Okay.
And I'm the one on the board list that doesn't have any
So
information.
you can
Yeah, so this is all gonna be new, like me to you. My name is Aaron Hutchison. I also started this last summer with Natalia. I'm the newbie of the group. I went to Newburgh High School. I moved here in 2004, and I have 2 kids in the district, a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old. And my wife works at school. She's a first grade teacher. The board was looking for some members, and there was some, CTEC program stuff starting up, and I kind of back in manufacturing, and 30 years of manufacturing and stuff like that. So and that just kind of interests me, mechanics and everything else. So I thought, well, maybe I could offer some suggestions and help with that program, as well as just kind of be involved with my kids.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you
So
so
love
much.
here.
I'm from Newburgh, I have 3 kids and
Oh, okay.
2 graduates. And Dory, would you share a little bit as well?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
I'm in my 6th year, which is really, really hard to believe. It's been a whirlwind. This is such a unique board and staff. I feel very blessed to be serving in this community. I enjoy using my leadership. I enjoy the fact that I'm not bored. Every day is a new adventure, and there's so much to do and so much to learn. And so this is a great group of people to work with. I really work to build those relationships. I was advised to start talking with community members about being on board. And so having the conversations, do not have conversations with Natalia, but we but we, and the interesting thing about, I thought was really cool about last May's election was that we had several people running. And that had never happened in Sheridan. In fact, there were oftentimes a seat where nobody ran and there would be a write-in as kind of a joke.
Yeah.
I went on a very few votes, yes.
Yeah, so it was great to have people wanting to be in the district, wanting to serve in this capacity.
Was this the same time that Yvonne was on the ballot too?
We failed twice. So
Okay.
we went out in November 22, May of 23, and then we won last May.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was also that was a huge win for the district with the bond passing and what we're going to be able to do with 12 million.
And Dory, were you from Rockford? Did you graduate?
Oh, my high school, I went to Philomath.
Okay.
I was all 12 years in Philomath. My mom taught. My dad was a choker setter and then was the middle school custodian when Philomath Middle School opened. And it's a great community. It's changed a lot since I lived in that town. It's very much part of Corvallis.
Yes.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I know oftentimes in your board work, you don't know these kinds of things about each other, especially when you're just coming on. You don't know where people are coming from. You don't know what they're bringing to the table, what their skills and things are. And sometimes it's really nice to have those opportunities. You don't always get to do that because all of your work has to be done in public. So it needs to be shared in public also, and it has to be something that you think you can accomplish. and you can only get together just one or two here or there, so it's kind of, I like to have those opportunities, and it really goes into the work that we're talking about as a new board member, and we'll get into that more, about what you bring to the table and how that works together. So I wanted to go ahead and have an opportunity to do that right off the bat. So I'm just gonna ask a couple of questions to kind of just start thinking about things before we dive right in. And the first thing I'd like you to consider is, you can answer out loud, or you can kind of consider to yourself, is why do school boards matter? You all had a reason for why you wanted to be on here. Did you really know what you were getting into when you signed up? Did you know what board members do? Often not. We have an idea, or we think we do until we get on the board. We always say, we don't really know what we, board members do, and we didn't either until we joined. So what do you think? Why do school board matter? Why does the school board matter?
I think it matters because each community is different. And the school board helps tailor that to the school district. So focusing on the community and the children here, because we often get forced into things from the state that don't fit our district at all. And our school board gets to be the filter for that through policy.
That's
It's amazing.
We've thought about this before. Anyone else? What are your thoughts? Why does the work that you do there, why do these boards matter?
I agree. I sub, and so I really like being able to take, it's kind of hard to say, but like, I really like being able to take what I see at school and be able to use it in the school board to help make decisions about our kids and how they're learning and what they're learning and what kind of curriculum they're reading, things like that I think will really benefit them, because I know we are a very unique community compared to some, and so there's a lot of challenges we have to overcome, and so like you said, tailor it to fit our community, really.
And as far as like us being a board of, individual votes and stuff, we all have different backgrounds. We all bring different perspectives to the table. I think that's what makes it really, really good.
I'd also add just holding each other accountable too. Like, I think the board is really good for obviously keeping Dory accountable, but making her keep everyone below her accountable too. And just like that, it's having someone to check in with, so that we're staying on track and doing the things we need to do to serve our community and our schools well. I think that's necessary.
Part of the policy committee, Natalia, and I've done that since I've been here, so I like that aspect of it, and making sure that we are in line with the policy, and maybe put in place policies that'll help, our district.
It's great. Thank you very much for sharing. You all kind of hit it on the head. We just, summarize that you create those conditions for student success. You're providing that kind of like on the ground kind of perspective, as well as like your community, but also you have to be aware of about the things that are coming down here being asked of you. So it's that you're in a great position to kind of really be changing it and make some effects on your students that are here in the school. So you've all covered that pretty well. So now I want to ask a little bit deeper. So why do you think the board culture matters? Like the relationship you have as board members, individuals coming together and doing the work, the culture you create, the expectations, why does that matter?
That's what your vision.
Well, and what happens in the boardroom ends up in the classroom.
Yeah.
So if we aren't working together and being teammates, then how do we expect anyone else to be?
Or how do we expect to be successful, period.
And I think because we also will have times where we don't always agree, so we have to agree to disagree, right?
Absolutely.
And keep a good culture and.
Not go out in the community and say bad things and all that. We still have to be like, hey, that's one of my board members. So yeah, I would disagree there, but that's okay. Moving forward.
I'd also say that a healthy board culture retains the superintendent.
Yeah.
No pressure, folks. Check that box. But it's true. You talk about a superintendent in the state of Oregon is 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And I finally figured out why. It's because that's when the board will flip.
Mm.
And if you don't have like-minded people coming on, or they don't agree with your vision or what you're trying to do, you're out and somebody else is invited.
Well, and we've dealt with some situations, not with the current board, but with the last one, that put us in these really weird feeling situations where things weren't explained and all that. That's why we were kind of like going forward, no surprises for Dory, no surprises for us. Like it's a mutual thing. Because it's really hard to function as a team or as a board when you're not sure what's going on over there, you know? That comment, where did that come from? And I don't wanna tell you. Well, you need to though. We need to unpack it.
Because not just you need to unpack it, but the people who are listening and the family.
Yeah, where did that come from? Yeah, so I think we have that now really well.
Great. Good. So yeah, that board culture really influences how you work together as a team and retaining your leadership and being strong together so that as that trickles down, and we'll get more to that trickling down later. So I just wanted to kind of get you thinking about this. So why does that board's relationship with your superintendent matter? Not just retention, but also
Yes.
that, stability, because stability and having somebody around a long time with institutional knowledge, all of these things really have proven with research that helps students to feel secure in their education. It helps parents to feel the same way, that they know who to go to talk to them.
Especially in a small district like Sheridan, where parents and kids actually know our superintendent.
Yes.
Right? Big districts don't really know the superintendent, just a figurehead. I mean, they're more than a figurehead, but you know what I mean, like, this is
Huge.
huge.
Do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot
They
of
actually
actually
know
going
it.
out in the community than
Yeah.
it is in some of the larger ones, for sure. Great. Well, you know we're on board, and I feel like some of you may have seen some of this material before, because we have some great answers. So when we're talking about why does that board matter, really it comes down to that board is that you're governing a public institution that's like central to Sheridan's identity and your future. When we talk about education here, you do, as you mentioned, you said that you mentioned that you hold the district accountable to the families, taxpayers, parents, the broader community, and you serve as that link between all of these different things, the community's values and the district's operations. You do sometimes have to provide that buffer, as you said about, when laws come down from the state, we have to kind of explain why those laws are there and how we're going to make it work here, because you understand what the concerns are here at the local level as well. So when concerns arise, you're kind of that buffer, you have to keep those students' needs at the center. And then you're also here to kind of set that long-term vision for what's possible for the Sheridan students. You help shape that culture, like we talked about, that board culture, how you're working together and the expectations you have that supports the academic, social, and emotional success of all your students. And then in smaller rural districts, as we kind of mentioned before, like the board's actions, they're seen, they're very, very, very visible, and they're deeply impactful in the small community as well. So every decision really resonates with those around you. So that's just a continuation of the conversation about why you matter so much, and you're at the center of things, especially in small communities. So I want to pause briefly to ask you a couple of questions. I'm going to ask you to read them silently. You don't have to answer them out loud, but I want you to consider them. They're kind of rhetorical questions, but at the same time, they're not. They're really getting to the core of what your beliefs are as a board. So can every child learn? Can every child show growth? Can every child succeed? Can we predict student outcomes based on social factors? And if we can, is that what we want? So just consider these just for yourselves for a little bit. And if anybody feels the need to share, please do. What these questions, I'm sure that you understand, that we're really getting to is that how the board believes their influences and their expectations and the budget priorities and policy decisions. What you believe about the answers to these questions really dictates everything that you do as a board. If you believe that not every child can learn, that not everyone can succeed or show some sort of growth that's relative to their situation, then you unconsciously kind of lower the bar. But if you believe that at some level they can succeed, success might look different for every student. But if you believe that there is some level of, growth and success and learning that can occur for every student, then that's kind of going to help you to raise those expectations, and that's going to inform every decision you make as well. If you have that belief at the center of what you're the work that you're doing. So then we ask, when you're looking at all these things, you think about these things, the final question is then, okay, so what percentage of students not graduating would be acceptable for your board? And you all agree.
That
with
is the goal, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's board members who don't agree with that, and those beliefs we need to talk about, we need to have a chance to share that and kind of come to a consensus and make sure that our beliefs are aligned. So yeah, that's kind of where we start. When we start talking about beliefs, we start talking about, hi, welcome, thank you for joining us. Raymond? I'm gonna pause here just really quickly, and I'm gonna put you on the spot, because everybody else had to. If you wouldn't mind just sharing, your name and, how long you've been on the board, and then you can also let me know why you joined the board and where you're from, as far as did you graduate from Sheridan or somewhere else?
So Trey Watkins, board member since, when was that?
One of the new ones.
And no, I'm not, I wasn't born here or anything, lived in Sheridan since 2016, I think it is. So my kids go to Sheridan School District. And then the board, over the years has expressed the need for people to come forward and be a part of the community and part of the organization to support it. And I felt like the school board was the place to do that. And my kids being here. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of other issues, but as far as like why, what brings you to the board and wanting to help do more for the school district.
So thank you very much for sharing. Just gonna catch you up, we've been talking a little bit about like why the school board work matters and why the culture between all of you as board members and the work that you do matters in your community, and how you're kind of that touch point between what the community needs and what the school district needs to do for the students. So we're just kind of getting there, we're talking a little bit about beliefs now, we're looking at some of these questions, just kind of what you believe as a board, can every child succeed? So we'll go ahead and move on. Really, we've kind of come to this point where that single belief that all students can and will learn, that's really at the heart of effective governance. That's what we found, not just in research, but just also in what we witness out here in the districts. It doesn't, by having this belief that all students can and will learn, it doesn't mean that you ignore that there's barriers, that sometimes there's disparities, but you refuse to let that define what is possible. And that's really what having this belief about the work that we do is really important. Boards that truly believe that all students can learn on whatever level that is for them, they really have, they can govern with a clear purpose, and they can set those higher expectations. This is really your why, and we're going to start talking about that a little bit more too. It drives your priorities, it drives the kind of questions you ask, it also drives what you do in your decision making. So just kind of connecting this belief, and it's great because you put these things up here and then you have your statements up here that you're kind of looking where all students can learn. You have all students that they can grow and succeed. Each student will be engaged and inspired and ready for the next set of challenges. So it's kind of nice that you put this up here and you already have those kinds of things at the
Those are
board.
brand new on our wall.
Aren't they beautiful? They're just lovely. I love it.
We got so many compliments.
It's so great. So it's kind of nice when what you're learning about is tying into what you're already doing. So it can be some validation for you as well. So I hope that that is seen. So we already started talking about how we show up in the classroom, and it's kind of indirect, but we do. You mentioned that earlier, and that's why we kind of started talking about this idea of this causal chain, and it's one of the things that's kind of centered around what we do as well. With the research, everything we do at OSBA is based in research. We have a lot of things that we've read and lots of different studies and stuff that we combine, and we sit there and make sure and see what are the patterns and what is it proving over time. Like, I mean, some of these are over 20 years of research and stuff, so we have a lot of backing to what we do, and that high-performing boards, they really measurably influence impacts on students. And when you have low-performing boards, those also have a negative impact on students, so we've seen both sides, where things that you're doing that actually have positive influence and negative influence. Effective boards really stay centered on that, those student outcomes, and they're focused on their achievement, their success. And then they have really clear rules about what they're supposed to do as a board as well. So when we sit there and we look at this, we're talking a little bit about our beliefs and values as individual board members, and that comes into and influences the why, the work that you do, the questions you ask. As you're working together, the respect you have for each other, you value that, and that's going to be brought to the table as you're doing your work and making those decisions. How you're working together, the expectations you have for yourselves and others, what you're modeling, that builds the board's culture, but it also directly reflects the organizational culture. If the staff is seeing how you're interacting with their superintendent, then that's going to be kind of the model of how they're going to interact with the superintendent from their level as well. And all these things kind of trickle down. What your culture is kind of determines what resources and priorities you have and the things you bring into the classroom to give the staff what they need in order to teach the children and teach the students what they have to be successful. So you may not be standing in the classrooms every day, but everything you do and everything you bring to the table directly gets there. So I just want you to keep thinking about that and reflecting on that as you're kind of thinking about your work and how that's informed. Okay. Furthering in on that, this slide really focuses on that why that we were kind of talking about. That why is your purpose as a governance team. It's why you serve. It's also why this work matters, which is what we've been talking about here in Sheridan, especially. The how, that next layer, is really your roles, your relationships. It's the communication that you have amongst each other and others, and it's also your responsibilities. That's how you do the work. And then the what is the visible work. It's actually what you're doing, the policies you're creating, the budgets you're approving, the superintendent evaluation, the meetings that you're holding. Boards oftentimes can get kind of stuck in this outer layer, the what, but returning to the why often helps you to make harder decisions, anchor your decisions, as long as you're talking about that why and the students at the center of it. That's where you really want to be focused. You don't want to be stuck so much in what you're doing, but why you're doing it. So how do you think that your individual why shows up in your board work? Anybody want to share? And we just talked about why we kind of join and what things are important to us. How do you think that shows up when you're making a decision about the budget?
Well, I know that our kids are going to have the things that they need for school, obviously, like, especially bringing Jeremy and I, we have kids in school, we want to know that they're getting what they need to be successful, so that they can graduate, so that they can, you know, be ready for college, or whatever it is they go to next. CTE stuff, you know, those kind of things are, I want to know that they, you know, that they're not going to left fall through the cracks.
I want to know that they're like inspired by the teachers. That's kind of my thing. Like I've had some amazing teachers over the years, and that, you know, that I still remember like the things they tell you, not just like the things that you commit to memory, but just the way that they were about stuff. And that was fantastic. In small towns, like teachers are kind of little superheroes anyway. Like, you go to anywhere around any of the parades, and like my wife's, you know, kids are yelling her name. It's like, it's pretty cool and special. So I just kind of want to know that the teachers are inspiring kids and making the experience good for the kids.
Absolutely.
I actually find this slide interesting.
Yeah.
I'm a very passionate person. Anyone that's in the room that has been for any length of time will know that. My why gets in the way sometimes, and I have to shut it down and go back to we're here for the kids. That is a good why, but it's not necessarily my why, right? It's part of my why, and redirect myself. So what's best for the district? How are we going to get there? How can we work together to get there? What makes the most sense? Sometimes it's hard to get there, and it doesn't align with your why. But sometimes you still have to do what's right for your district and the community, because that's ultimately why we're here. So I have to make sure my own personal why doesn't get in the way.
And that's an excellent point that you bring up, and I really want to kind of sit there with that for a little bit. So when you're talking about your why and how you come to the table in the decision, you say sometimes it can get in your way. But what it is that you're coming to the table with your why, you're coming with yours, you're coming with yours. And together you have to kind of talk about like what's important to all of you. And then you come together and you make sure that they somehow align. And what are we going to focus on? If this is what I'm passionate about, this is what I'm passionate about. So what do we get from that? What are our priorities from all those different things? And sometimes you have to give up on a little bit in order to make sure that we achieve something that you definitely think is really important now, and maybe later some why can come back in. So it's important to differentiate that individual why as well as The board's why, because you speak as a unit together and would make decisions together. And then that kind of stretches into what you want for the district in the future. And as long as your why is focused on the students, even your own individual passions, and sometimes that way you can realize, okay, is this good for them as well? If that's the focus of the students' focus, is that good for them now? Or is that good?
Right, you have to be able to step back and
Yeah.
a little step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. So now we've talked a little bit about why things matter. We've talked about our whys, we've talked about the board whys, we've talked about beliefs, believing that students can all learn and achieve in some way together. Now I want to really focus on their values, not just your individual values. We're going to do a little exercise here. But then I want to come together and kind of see how your individual values come together and see if there's similarities or if encompass and you all have a larger list of values. So I read a book, Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, and she had this excellent activity, and it's a values kind of thing activity. So she has a list of all these words, and as soon as I show them to you, you're going to be very intimidated. All I'm asking is for you to pick two, and that sometimes is the hardest thing to do. But pick two values that you really, really find important in your work as an individual board member and what you're doing here. So that's what I want you to focus on, not just overall what your values are, but really hone it in on what you do as a board member. So here's the list, and I'm going to ask you to kind of go through them, really think about them, and be like, okay, which two really stand out that surface to the top for my values? I'm going to jot them down. And then I'm going to have you kind of turn to each other and share a little bit about why. And then we're going to go around and see what everybody said. So take a little time to do that.
But again, Jen, is this values you feel like we apply to ourselves, like that we think that we're trying to bring to the table, or do you need like values, like things that we would value overall as a board?
I want what values that are up there resonate most with your work as a board member. Like what things about, the district, I think that you think about when you're motivated to go a certain way.
Noted down to 3.
Happens all the time. I keep going down the list and I'm like, wait.
It's really hard because some people are like,
Be more fun to guess each other's.
that actually might be a good element.
No cheating.
No, she
Well, if everyone thinks that they've got there too, if you want to kind of share, we can do it out loud if you want to kind of just turn to each other, just to explain which one you chose, and then maybe why, a little bit about why that's important, why those are values you chose.
I can go first. I have contribution for mine, just, contributing to the community. I think she's giving it back, but I feel like that kind of tied in together, so, that one. And then I'm torn between diversity and future generations. Diversity because there is a small population in our community of, Latinx, students, and, I feel like I can represent that. And then, future generations, just because what I do here, for the time that I'm here, I hope that it makes a really good impact on future generations.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. I'm gonna say it again, I feel like accountability, and I think part of that is just within our district, like within our school, between us, superintendents and stuff, but also to the community. I mean, we have to be accountable for the choices we make as a district, and so I think there's just that need for strength across the board between all of us, and, we can't be effective if we have weak links. So we gotta hold each other accountable because we're only gonna be as strong as our weakest link, and so I think there's need for strengthening some of those links within our district here and there, and we all have things, and that's myself too, that needs to be held accountable. So that's number one. The second one I put is integrity. I think that just goes with making good decisions, and I think with integrity comes transparency, and I'm gonna steal wisdom off of there, but just in how we make decisions and what we're bringing to the district and how we handle the choices we have to make and stuff like that. So,
Great, thank you for sharing.
Growth and trust. And so we have to grow, and that's kind of why we're here to help the organization do that. And help those plans along once they've already do so. Trust, community has to trust us in the position that they voted us in. Right, so it's really important that we remember that.
Yeah, I would say understanding, just to kind of, I always try to make sure I understand everybody has different lenses they're looking at things, so I try to kind of make sure that your choices are based on your lens and how you understand things, and try to make sure that I understand where somebody's coming from before I can judge maybe what they want to do. And then kind of ambition, I guess, to get things done and do stuff.
Got it.
All right, I'm going out on a limb here. I don't usually bring this to the boardroom, but my faith, because my faith grounds me. And I would be lying if I didn't say that is the foundation of me. My second word is truth. It kind of goes along with trust. That was like my third one. Because if we can't sit in a room and tell each other the truth about everything, we can't solve the problems.
Where am I supposed to be?
Right.
I have, first one I immediately looked for was service. My leadership style is servant leader. I fully believe that I'm here to serve. I don't call it my district. I will always say Sheridan School District. In fact, I park on the administrators there, not to say my school. They're to say Faulkner Chapman or Sheridan High School, and they owe me when they screw up. And the other one I gotta say is just perseverance. It was the best one up there I could find of, well, I was doing a word study the other day on fortitude. And it's that, it goes beyond the stick with itness. But are you really willing to look at all the obstacles and figuring out your path forward? But I thought perseverance goes with that. I just approach things of don't quit. There's gotta be a way through this.
So I should still care.
So as your fellow board members were sharing their values, anyone surprised by what they shared? Does it seem pretty spot on?
Well, my fellow board members, is just what Dory said about service, because I always say my something, and so that was just interesting to hear, because I'm like, oh, my clients, right? Because if I have ownership of something, or I feel ownership, of something, then I will give or do better. And so for me, that's why I was like, oh, my clients or my program, right? And so just, it's interesting to hear that.
Yeah, it's a different way of looking at it too. And it all depends on the values you bring to it as well. And people interpret words differently. You know what I mean?
Well, I think we call them our students. They're our students, but yet we're here to serve, so the organization is not mine.
Right, it's ours, yeah. So as we're looking at these, and sometimes it happens when we get these up there, there's a lot that kind of filter the top that everybody kind of agreed on. And then sometimes we have what we have here where everybody brought something different to the table. But would there be one or two out here that as a board we think that you all agree on? That maybe it would have been a third choice or something if I gave you more? That you might have selected as well?
I would have selected trust as my third.
Yeah.
Because I know it's been an issue within the community.
as well.
As well?
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
Any other words up there that seem for you to, that you might put if you do some more? Or that you think that as a board, these are things that you absolutely keep in mind, the value that you have for your constituents and for your community
So this is my third.
service?
I'm so perseverance over our small district.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's been 3 times too.
All right, thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely.
Going along with that though, and what you were saying about how it trickles down from us to the, to our schools, I think that's something our kids lack a lot. I've seen a lot of that this week too, of just wanting to quit the first time they lose. And so I think that's something we could really strengthen within our schools too. And I think it's gonna have to start with us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for going through that exercise. I always think it's fun to do, frankly, to learn more about each other and what really kind of motivates you, but also to think about these kinds of things. What do we value and how do they align? How do all these things that we have up here align with the work that we do? That's really important to keep in mind as well. And now you actually have something concrete that you all. So we're going to kind of jump a little bit into that idea of, we're going to talk soon about some of these standards for like being really effective boards and board members, and all based on that research. And we kind of really start with these high performing boards, and how they impact students and then what the research shows. So basically, with all the studies that we did, and we're only listing 3 up here just because we want to show you that all 3 of them kind of had some of these elements, just so that there's proof that this is, we're not just making this up. But high-performing boards, what was found in all the studies is that they had kind of all these elements over here on the left-hand column. And these are just kind of descriptions as to what those look like and what they're doing well. So if you have your vision and goals, high-performing boards, it's a key role of the board to kind of set those clear expectations, and they develop a vision of high expectations for student learning. It's that belief that all students can learn, so we're going to set these expectations really high, because if we set them really high, then we're only moving up, we're only aiming towards up so that we can continue to grow. The climate and resources, the board really takes a long view. When they're a high-performing board, they take a long view, and they create conditions for success by creating like a sense of urgency around the student outcomes, and they align their resources with whatever the district's vision is. For data and monitoring, it's an accepted norm that the boards kind of they're data savvy. You have to be able to look at what you're seeing, you have to understand that there are trends, you have to be able to ask questions and kind of track what progress, because that's part of your role is monitoring that you're making progress towards things that you want to do and what your vision is for the district. And that students are being successful as well. So there's other types of district information, but that's really just an element that they really, high-performing boards are looking at data. They're not just looking at numbers, but they're also listening to stories, and we're using all that together to kind of monitor and look for trends and make sure that we're heading in the direction that we want to. This idea of cohesive teaming is also something that high-performing boards are kind of showing, and that they're having impact positively on students. An academic term that's really for practicing ongoing learning as a leadership team, which is something that you're doing here tonight, so excellent. It's practicing that unified governance through the shared beliefs that we talked about earlier, and then also about what's possible for all children. They also have elements of high-performing boards have in community engagement. They're doing this well. They're building public will. They're engaging the community and partners, not just their community, but also, the community, the city council, and different partnerships that we have and groups, community groups that we have around here. They're kind of bringing everyone together and in collaborative relationships. I think that's the important part here is about that collaboration, so that we can succeed. And then finally, high-performing boards also have that policy and accountability, some important things that we talked about up here, that integrity, that transparency and accountability, that's really important. And so how they're doing that is that the board operationalizes the governance through the policy with a focus on student learning. And that accountability is driven based on what you want, what kind of things you want to happen for student learning. On the opposite end, we do have the practices that are associated with negative impacts. So boards are actually having impact. They do have impacts, both positively or negatively, depending on how they're performing together. And the research does kind of show that distractions or meetings that aren't productive, boards spending the majority of their time discussing things other than student needs and outcomes, that's kind of one of those indicators. If there's poor relationships, effective boards really need to cultivate those high levels of trust, and sometimes some of these things that are happening break down that trust. Boards could strive or should strive to be like a state of informed oversight. We don't want to be, micromanaging, but we also don't want to be on the other end where we're just kind of saying yes to everything that superintendent brings to us, although sometimes that's good too. There's some of the things that you'll see too is effective boards are taking responsibility for student outcomes instead of making excuses or blaming parents or blaming other external factors for why things aren't working out the way they want them to. And then also sometimes just that idea that effective boards are making decisions based on system information and not their own experience or their own priorities or their own initiatives. So kind of like talking about not letting the water get in the way, that kind of thing. So.
Can I say a question for you?
Sure.
In the poor relationships column, it says staff don't know the board. What does that look like? Like, how do you fix something like that?
Well, honestly, there's accountability on both parts on that. So if you're in a very public meeting, all the work you do is very public. So if the staff doesn't know the board, who they are, what they're doing, that's because maybe they aren't participating in some of the meetings or they aren't watching what's going on. But also it's an element of high-performing boards. Board members are, they're making sure that they're out there in the community, which isn't hard to do in a small community.
Right.
Attending events that are important to the school, really showing support for the superintendent for when they're going out and they're doing bond work and stuff. Showing up to those things and telling the community, hey, I'm one of you, I'm helping to make these decisions. Like, this is what I value, I'm hearing what you have to say. So if people don't know you and you're not going out there, like, sometimes you do it when you're getting ready to be elected, but then it kind of stops, where people don't really put that same effort into what we do is trying to get elected.
Right.
So it's just that idea of the high-performing boards are really making sure that not only are they seen in the community, but when they're in the meetings, the public session, that they're also sharing some of these ideas and thoughts and questions that they're having openly. If you're not doing that, if you're not questioning things, if you're not sharing why you are making certain decisions and stuff like that in the open public session, then nobody is going to really know that.
Well, I kind of feel like we are getting better at the community aspect of that, but the staff, I really feel there's a disconnect between our board and our staff members. And I guess I was looking to you to hopefully see how do we bridge that gap. I feel like we know our admin really well, like we have a great relationship with them. I feel like I can ask them anything and I would get a great honest answer. What should the relationship between us and other staff members? I mean, I know quite a few staff members, but again, we're a small district. I probably know a quarter of them.
I know because of my kids.
Right, and that's how I knew them, but your kids aren't in every grade level, so you don't know all the staff either, so.
They've been through.
Yeah, but the staff changes,
Friction, I
yeah,
guess.
but the staff changes on a regular basis. I mean, we don't have a ton of turnover, thank God, but you get what I'm saying, like, what is a healthy relationship between the board and staff members on every level look?
Well, I think we have to also talk about that element of like the board not overstepping. too much.
Absolutely.
It's really hard for you to kind
Absolutely.
of have a relationship, and you can't always have a relationship that you're developing with them, but you can provide opportunities for you to share about yourself in a way that they can learn about you if they're being proactive. Because it's very difficult for you to go in, because there's that like idea that the board members are kind of my boss too, you know what I mean? And also, sometimes it's just a matter of inviting staff to come to a board meeting, to share what they're doing, and then maybe having some discussion like that. That's an appropriate way to learn about staff without like creating these one-on-one kind of connections or things like that. So that might be some way that staff can come here and you can get to know them.
And we do some of that.
Okay.
I mean, we just need to do more of that.
Yeah.
I was gonna say maybe make it, I know for me it's really hard, but I need to maybe make it a priority to go to the luncheon, at the beginning of the school year. And if there could be like some components there, that activity of.
Tell them about yourself and vice versa.
Yeah.
Get to know them.
I agree.
Every other Friday or every Friday for a couple hours, like there's a session with all the teachers or?
They have staff meeting usually at 10 or 10:30. Students, so we run a modified 4-day week. So students are in 8 to 10, and then it's staff meetings and committee meetings from 10 to 12 on Fridays.
Yeah. I don't know, I'm just trying to, I wrap my head around what it should look like, because like I agree with you, we can't be too close, we don't need to be buddy with all the staff members, and we walk a fine line, so what does a healthy relationship look like with staff members?
I think a healthy relationship starts with you modeling some of the things we talked about, the board culture and expectations and setting that vision. When you're putting that out there, and then you're also making sure that it's communicated down to the staff, that you take things like this and what the board believes in and where they want to go, and you make sure that that's present in the schools. That if there's a newsletter, if there's some way that you're kind of sharing what your work that you're doing with staff, and it's kind of you're pushing it out to them, not so much as asking them to kind of, come to you to find out. You know what I mean? So just using the meetings and using a way of communicating what you're doing and why you're doing it. That's just the kind of thing. And you want to talk about the different ways that you can do that in the established boundaries of your role, as well as the open public. And sometimes there's some creative ways to come up with. If that's something that they're saying. So now this is just.
I don't know if our staff are saying.
I was gonna say-
think as a board member, there's a disconnect between us and our
And you might
staff.
want to ask them,
Yeah.
and find out, what do they think, it might have an issue, you might be high performing in this area, and you're just not sure.
I was thinking we should
Probably
do like a scavenger hunt of like at the community events, like get a signature from a school board member. Or like throughout the year, right, like that would be kind of fun. So
That's kind of, it can be small things, it can be bigger things, but it's just ways to make sure that they feel that there isn't that kind of, get to know who you are, and that you're open to, especially not so much the staff, but that's everyone, it's the community,
Yeah,
people, parents.
we've come a long ways in the last years with the community. Yeah.
Well, all that work we did with the birth parents for the bond and
Yes.
having to learn how, I mean, you shared that excellent, like, kind of PowerPoint, like, what things we changed and how we did things differently. And that's all part of the learning process. When a bond fails, you learn a lot. And then when it fails again, you learn even more. And then when you find out that it finally passed and see what worked, then you're kind of finding that sweet spot. So just apply that to not just the community, but also your staff.
I appreciate the fact you said it goes both ways, because I do see the staff and having a very young staff with young families. You know, they put in speaking about teachers, they put in a ton of time. And, I might hear some things, or there might be some wonderings about the board occasionally, but really, they're so focused in on their job. And that it's like, yeah, the board's over there doing their thing, and then, we've got Doreen here, and then we've got our admin, and then, where they're at in that whole organizational structure.
As long as we're not causing problems,
Yeah.
all is good.
Exactly.
They definitely, as soon as after May, when the voting was done, I went to the school just to kind of I don't know if it was hang out for lunch or maybe I was kind of find kids. And the very first question was, are you here on official business? And I'm like, whoa. No, I'm certainly not. Calm down.
When are you a board member? and
Yeah.
when are you not?
Yeah, that's a difference too. Sometimes it's kind of saying that, like, I'm gonna take off my foot.
Okay.
Never really take it. I'm sorry.
That's the hard reality, you cannot take it off.
Yeah.
You can.
But we can establish a trust
True.
so that they don't have to
That's
feel guarded
exactly
around us, to know like, everything we hear is a true story. And I'm gonna get in trouble from Adam or something. It's just like,
Well, sometimes just providing opportunities to get that kind of feedback about how they feel, and then talking about that in your meetings, be like, okay, this is what I'm hearing. And sometimes if they hear you talk about what you're hearing and what's important to you too, then they're getting to know you. And then if they are at the meetings to hear that, then we have to have some way to communicate, here's the highlight, Not everybody reads the minutes either, or watch the recordings, but sometimes they do.
Does any feedback from our meetings go back to the staff, like me and you? Okay.
Well, Adam.
So like if we're like, oh, the music concert was amazing and, it was so great, you relay that somehow.
I do, and then Adam also, not so much Pat, but when Adam does his staff shout outs, he will let the staff know that he was praising these staff at the board meeting. He closes that loop, which is really good. And then, I think definitely, we talked a little bit about board comments. I think if you hear Adam or Pat say something about staff, that's just an opportunity to reinforce, hey, it was great to hear about these activities or how many kids, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It just reinforces it, like, you heard that.
And then we're talking about things that they're doing, that you've seen.
But now that I think about it, and I was with Central School District for a long time, I do remember grade level teachers coming in and sometimes bringing students and doing a report to the board. And we just have never done that.
But it would be fun.
I
I really enjoyed our abstinence reports, so. I think the high school one's awesome.
Mr. Chadwick taking the kids fishing. So would it be fun after our fishing field trip to have a couple of kids talk about their experience of fishing at a board meeting?
Yeah.
And
And many of us have gone to that fishing too. I mean, it's a lot of fun.
I didn't even know South Pond existed. Until that first fishing trip. South Pond. This place is amazing. How did I not know this?
Well, sometimes when you create those opportunities for staff to come in and talk about their students, and when you have the students there, and then they hear your reactions, because they're sharing a part of themselves with you, and they get to hear how you're reacting, then they start to feel like they get to know
Yeah.
I'm making a
you.
because we would love to hear, especially the things that maybe bother them.
Yeah.
Because we don't, I mean, it's great to hear all the good news as well, but it's the things that bother them that we can act on.
Or the
and change
struggles,
to.
yeah.
Yeah, like what the struggles are.
Because like I was talking before, the data is important, but so are the stories. And if you're telling them that I'm making time to hear about this, and you're getting to see my interactions and the questions I'm asking you, then you can feel a little bit about what I value and like what's important to me. And then when we have those shared values, then they can look to you and say, okay, they get it. And I feel like I'm represented here, which means I know who they are.
Well, I think we have some work in that area.
Yeah, for yourself. No, like really though, I do feel like, even before I was on the board, I was starting to be in the schools a little more. And so I volunteer here and there, but even now, like subbing, I really enjoy it. And I enjoy going and getting to know the teachers more, but I feel like I get to talk to them. So I do feel like I'm already into that, maybe a little more than you guys. Because at one school, yeah, not the other, I gotta go with it.
We have a whole district.
But I feel like I worked to build a good rapport even before I was elected on that, we have that relationship. And even then, when I was elected, this is gonna sound bad maybe, but I didn't go advertise that all around yet, because I didn't want people to feel uncomfortable around me and not want to talk to me.
That's right, we are.
Yeah, but, I feel like I have a pretty decent relationship, and there's still teachers finding out that I'm on the board, and I'm like, well, yeah, we're here, but it's good, like, we've already got something, and so, like, maybe that's not good, maybe I shouldn't.
But that's right there,
That close, but-
validating my point, that the
Yeah.
staff and us have a disconnection.
Yes.
If they didn't know you were on the board,
Yeah, that's
everyone
true.
should know who's on the board.
Yeah, yeah.
Just like we should know who all the staff are.
Well, and I was wondering too with Dory, like, I know you said some of the stuff goes back from meetings. Do they know about the decisions we're making too? Like when we re-sign for the food stuff, or like, do they hear about those things that we're doing as well? Or
I think
are
Jen
they
would know about
in a
that.
disconnect? Because
Yeah, I started doing like just quick notes
Mhm.
out to staff. And there's sometimes I'll let them know about, hey, the board approved this, or, here's a new policy, especially like cell phones.
Yes, things
You
that
know,
apply to
that
that.
affects
them in the
them
classroom.
in the classroom,
Yes.
and the board approved this, the board's considering this. I let them know, like, the 26, 27 calendar, we're working on that, it should be going to the board, things like that.
Okay. I think these are all some great conversations, and I think it's something to consider. We're gonna kind of move on and talk about some of the things we're doing, and these are just some examples of things that we're doing, but I'm also gonna be talking about the standards. And when we start talking about the standards of effective work and safety balance governance, then you can kind of recognize things that you might be doing well, things that maybe you don't. Maybe the things you're doing well, you know, you should do other things too. So we'll talk some more about it. We're gonna continue though. So I just want to do a brief little thing about, we're going to start going into that roles and responsibilities and things, and I just want to establish what the leadership team is and the different elements and the different priorities of those different elements. So I want to explore those 3 essential roles that are the district's leadership team, and so we're going to have the board, and the board's really responsible for that legal authority, oversight, and direction. You're acting as the community's governance voice. And then part of this is the superintendent. That's the leadership team together, the superintendent and their cabinet and their admin team. They bring that leadership expertise, and it turns the board direction into action for student success. So that's that circle right there. I also want to bring in the board clerk and secretary, because we have a lot of things that you have to coordinate for compliance just for the meetings and stuff. I know that Dory might take a lot of that on, but you also might have some assistance with the board clerk and secretary.
0.5.
Oh, see, yeah, I did that point
Exactly.
too, so it's really hard, there's too many things.
And her other job is food service.
Oh,
Nutrition service. So it's a full
Yeah.
job.
So it's really between the both of you that kind of make sure that the meetings are, coordinated, they're compliant, and that those things are posted and the laws are. So you have all these different elements, and sometimes they're combined. But the effectiveness of this team really relies on the collaboration between all of these groups and the different things that they need. So that core relationship with the board and the superintendent is really that district leadership. It's built on trust, it's built on communication. The clerk and the board, which is also kind of falls under the superintendent, because the clerk is under the superintendent. You keep that governance on track, the procedures organized, keep things transparent with your minutes, your recordings, and things like that. And then that superintendent clerk, they kind of drive the smooth operations as well. But really what you're looking at too is that center sweet spot where everybody kind of is doing their own roles. They know what they're responsible for. They know what their authority is. They know what they need to do as part of the team to make sure that the whole team is being effective and that they're doing everything that they need to do. And that's just talking about simple roles. But now we're going to kind of talk about that governance versus management, because the governance versus management is really the difference between the board's leadership role and the superintendent's leadership role. So that governance kind of defines the direction, and that's the board side. And then the management handles the execution of that direction, and that's the superintendent and administrative side. So as board members, your strength kind of lies in setting that clear direction, adopting the policies and the budget, and holding the system accountable, and also just making sure that the results are happening. So that's your monitoring progress and accountability on that side. And then you're not really running the day-to-day operations, whereas the superintendent is managing how the plans that you've made, the policies you've set, how those actually get implemented, the staff, the spending of the budgeted money, and the curriculum delivery. So those are just two sides. In small districts, sometimes these lines can move really easily, but discipline's really key, just making sure that you're each kind of aware of what portion of the different combined activities are. But you set the policy, but then the superintendent makes the regulations, the administrative regulations for how that policy is actually implemented. You want to avoid overstepping into that management, like we're talking about that line between talking with staff. You got to be careful, because your hat on, it's perception. It's the superintendent's role to make sure that hire and fire staff, not the board. So the only employee you have is the superintendent, and even the clerk. That sometimes it's hard because you have a dynamic with the clerk that's different than other staff and stuff like that too. So we just have to, it's easy to blend the lines. You just want to be very sure that you're kind of sticking where you need to, so that we don't create inefficiencies or we don't show mistrust for each other and what our roles are. Really knowing our roles and knowing what we are doing, where our authorities are, kind of runs into this idea of balanced governance. And this balanced governance is where these standards are kind of coming from. We're talking about this high-performing boards versus low-performing boards, and you really want to find that spot in between how you do that. Well, balanced governance is really making sure that you're not on one side or the other, that you're not on the disengaged side where you're just like, I'm not even reading my packets, I'm not answering or asking any questions. If it's brought to the board and the motion's set there, I'm going to go ahead and say yes. So that's disengaged. You're not really like bringing anything to the table, you're just kind of reclining in the seat. On the other side is that overreaching and micromanaging, where it's like you're digging a little bit too far into some things and you're removing what your role is in, and you're starting to do what the superintendent's role, which can create some mistrust. You're really relying on them for their expertise, and not all of us come from an educational background or even in school sometimes. So it's really hard to know for sure how things are actually put into place. So what you're aiming for is in that middle, that informed oversight where you're informed about what's going on, you know the data, you know the things, and you're getting that reported to you by the superintendent or by your own things that you're seeing. And then you're kind of watching, you're making sure that, okay, these are the things going on. I want to make sure that it's heading in the direction that we as a board have decided that it's going to be. So just that idea of setting clear goals and then using that evidence and data to make sure that you're getting there, asking the right questions, monitoring your progress, and then just not going one way or the other so it builds trust and accountability. So how do we get here? How do we get to balanced governance or collaborative governance? What's effective? So balanced governance standards, we actually have a whole book on it. I don't know if you've ever seen it or read it before, but this is really at the basis of a lot of the things that we teach, especially if you look at our Leadership Institute program for board members to kind of educate yourself and go through things that are all based on these 12 standards. And you can learn about different areas by taking different workshops and things at our events. So we're going to kind of go through them really quickly. And then I'll provide you some stuff afterwards too that you can have these, if you want to try to write them down as we go. So I'm just going to cover them really quickly just to give you an idea of what they are so you can start thinking about them and reflecting on how your board is performing in each of those areas. So the first standard for effective boards and balanced governance is the vision-directed planning standard. So this is strong boards are keeping the vision at the front and center. Their decision and goals are tied back to student outcomes. And we've given Sharon insights. You have a real advantage to monitoring that progress really easily because you can see these things going on. You can hear things that are going on. So you know if that vision is being shared and it's actually coming to fruition with data and it's just the things that you see in school. The second, which I know you guys have learned a lot about through your bond work, is that community engagement. When you're doing things effectively, a board is engaging, is proactive, it's not passive. Your input has to kind of shape the decisions that you're getting from everyone. You don't want to just collect their information. You actually want to review it and want to make sure that you're implementing it into your decisions. You want to consider whose voices you are hearing and then also whose voices are missing. Effective leadership is really when there's a focus on your meetings, on strategy and not operations. You're really thinking about long term, you're thinking about how to get there, not on the implementation of it. There's clear agreements and aligned evaluation goals when you're evaluating the superintendent, and then also how the superintendent is maybe evaluating other staff. Especially important with the new board members, if you're just joining in, this is really a good area for you to kind of know what the board focus is, what it looks like for being an effective leader. Number 4, standard 4 is accountability, which we've talked a lot about, and it really just requires that you have clear goals and honest data. The boards are responding when progress is off track, when things are not going the way that they wanted to. We need to maybe reset and talk about that and talk about maybe we need to go in a different way. It directly also connects to superintendent evaluation and accountability because you're holding the superintendent accountable. You also have the element of holding yourselves accountable. And part of that is knowing these standards and areas that you might need to grow as a board member individually and also as a board as a whole. We do have ways that you can assess yourselves as board, and I think sometimes that's really valuable to do to kind of see where your strengths and where your areas of growth are. So then when you're starting to talk about your superintendent's areas of growth and strengths, then you can kind of have something that you understand and that you can talk about this and have those conversations so that you're all aligned and going in the same direction together. Okay, super fast. The next set of 4, we have standard number 5. Standard number 5 is using that data for continuous improvement. So the boards don't need to be statisticians, but you do want to be just curious, and you want to be able to look at things and notice trends, and you want to look for consistency, and you also want to be able to ask really good questions. You want to see clear metrics, and then you want to prevent decisions based on just stories. You want to actually see the evidence in both. It's really important to have data as well as the stories, like I mentioned before. So data should really guide which programs you're expanding, which programs you might change, or which programs you might let go of, based on what the data is showing you and the stories you're hearing. When you're doing cultural responsiveness, standard 6 really well, equity is applied to every agenda. So really what this is talking about is that you have, if you talk about all students needing to succeed, and you need to look at data that's broken up in a disaggregated way where it's like separated, so you can see if there's certain groups or there's certain students sets that are not achieving as well, and you need to talk about that. And so really, if it's that idea that all students are succeeding, then you're looking at all students and making sure that everyone's being brought up to where you want them to be and what the expectations are. It's kind of that idea of just recognizing that there's diversity, there's different groups, people coming from different backgrounds, and kind of applying that to your decisions, making sure that no one's being missed. In standard 7, that culture and climate, we talked a lot about culture and climate. For being effective, you want to make sure that your meetings are modeling respect, and you want to reinforce the expectations for civil discourse and how you talk to each other and how you talk to others. Climate data from students, staff, and families inform your priorities. So are you doing surveys? Are you asking people about their culture and climate, how they're feeling here, and is that informing what your strategic plan priorities are? I'm sure that you did a lot of that work when you were working on a great visual, by the way. Love it.
Communications person.
That's awesome.
No, I certainly do not write those.
So really, the board's tone is set here sets the tone for the entire system. We kind of talked about that, how your culture reaches into the organization wide, and then eventually makes its way into the classroom. So you want to be mindful of this, and you want to see if you're being effective in this area as well. The 8th standard is learning organization, and that's really that the board's encouraging reflection and learning at every level, including their own. Your major initiatives include, like, what did we learn? Having some sort of review, reflection, and also just that idea of continuous improvement becoming routine and not reactive. Not when somebody comes up and tells you you're doing something wrong, okay, now we'll do something about it. But no, maybe recognizing yourself. How can we do something wrong, but maybe we can improve, and how can we do that? Standard 9 is systems thinking. So really your decisions are considering district-wide ripple effects, not just, at one school or for an issue, but you're really thinking about how does this affect the district overall and everyone in it. We want to make sure that there's cross-department collaboration between teaching and learning, HR, transportation, technology, those kinds of things to help reduce the idea that somebody is over here working on something by themselves, but they're not connecting with somebody else that they probably should be. So making sure that those things are, just everything is thought about, decisions are made with systems in mind. And then boards keeping an eye on how your choices today have like long-term effects to the capacity and to the student experience. When you're doing standard 10, well, that innovation and creativity, it kind of just speaks for itself. New ideas start as like pilots, and if there's success, then you can kind of move forward with them, or you can decide to stop them. But it's always just being willing to try something different, not just because we've always done it this way, we're going to continue to do it this way. You want to look at data when you're trying new things out. You want to make sure that the results are being reviewed openly before you decide to move on or continue or remove any programs. Also that the board's willing to try those new approaches. but only when it shows that there's positive impact for students. That's really the important thing about being innovative and creative. You can be innovative and creative and not have positive effects, and that's not where we want to go. Okay, number 11, that's kind of what we're doing here. We're talking about board member conduct, your ethics, your relationship with the superintendent over these next few sessions that we're talking about, that we're really talking about your roles and responsibilities. I think we talked about the no surprises, agreeing on communication channels, which we're going to discuss further along the line. Board members disclosing that they have conflicts and recusing themselves when it's appropriate. Just being consistent, respectful behavior at the table, and just modeling that expectations for the rest of the system. And that's part of what you're doing right here, you're learning about your rules. And finally, standard 12 is of course that budgeting and financial accountability. And that's where the budget priorities are really mapped directly to what your goals are and what student outcomes you want to achieve. Your regular financial reports are explained. They're not just numbers, but you're hearing what the impact is on learning and services provided. And then you're spending time making sure that decisions are transparent and that they're documented and defensible to the community. Whew, I'm gonna throw it on. It's a lot. So, I mean, I don't expect it, I mean, I've read this book, it's taken me 2 years to kind of get some of these down and kind of like, what does that look like? It's not just what a description of it is, but what does this look like in practice? And that's always kind of the hardest part to start talking about. But having these conversations, start at least being aware of them. As I said, we have a leadership institute, you can go through different workshops and learn more about these. But if you were to just kind of look back on these, and I know some of you were taking some notes, if you just think about them, I'm going to go back to this list where they're all kind of listed here. What would you say that in your board work now, like, are there any that kind of surface to the top of the, like, you know what, we're doing number one really well? Is there one or two that you think your board is really strong, your district's really strong?
I mean, if our focus, you're, like, number one is, we're on track. Finally figuring that out. We've kind of leaped some bounds since working with them, so.
We're in our third year with student education for our strategic planning.
Okay,
So you mentioned like the culture climate, we do surveys for parent, caregiver, staff, and students twice a year.
okay,
And there are 20, and they do this nationally, but there are 20 questions on those surveys.
Mhm.
And then we create our goals. And what you pulled up was our annual 5-year goals.
Yep.
And then we have district annual goals with a scorecard that is public facing, that I
Did see
can
the
present to the
scorecard.
board. That is, we stoplight it, basically, on what have we accomplished, where we can grow. So, and that hits several of those areas.
I love it, that's that monitoring progress and stuff like that. Now, I know that when you make strategic plans, you're usually about 5 years, right? And you do this thing every 2 years. So do you go back and look at your strategic plan priorities and stuff? Do you make any changes based on the data that's coming back from the surveys?
Actually, those direct our annual goals.
Okay, annuals.
Annual goals.
Perfect.
Yeah, so where their great achievement.
Mhm.
One of the questions is, from a student perspective, the students at my school show respect to one another. One of the questions for parents, and this is one that we're continuing to work on, is that I received positive comments or positive feedback from my child's teacher.
Okay.
And then the one from the employees that we wrestled with is having to do with understanding of district resources available to our employees. It's always been low. So we create our goals and then look at action steps and progress monitoring. And that's on the management side.
Yeah.
Or you can see the stoplight report. And we're just in year 3.
But I do know that, like, even though these are kind of your annual goals and things like that, I was also looking back, and then what you're talking about right there kind of goes under your overarching strategic goals of having invested employees. So like, it all kind of still aligns with the direction that you set, you know, in what, 2004 or something like that too. So that's good to know that you kind of have this overarching, and then you break it down, and then you watch that, and you monitor it, and then you have feedback, and then that might determine what goals we're working on that kind of to that overarching goal. It's great. So you're doing vision directing planning really well. What else do you think you're doing well?
We're doing budgeting and finance. well. I mean, it's a very hard one, but Karen is really, really good at it. Like, she's very thorough, she knows the stuff, she presents it, whatever information we would like. Yeah, I feel like
I feel like she's really willing to change things to make it so we can see what we need to see. So if there's something we're not seeing, she'll make it visible.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
there's never a, we can't do that.
No,
It's
it's
always
very
like, what would you like to see?
Yeah.
Like, how would you
In the
just like?
past, it wasn't that way before her.
Okay.
So it was, felt like there's a lot of things hidden from us. And now I don't feel that way, which is nice.
I think system thinking as well, because we always like, what is the impact on all these things, right?
Yeah.
And like, just talking about policy, we're looking at the policy, and it's like, oh, this is going to happen. This is going to hit payroll, right? So that, there's an impact there, so looking at that, just kind of what all is our deep decisions that we can come to impact.
Innovation, creativity, and that's where Robert's coming along. I mean, yeah, we feel like we're kind of been in a slow, but I mean, you always kind of hit those at some point. There's always speed bumps, right? But we're trying to figure out how to meet our students' needs to get them into the workforce when we recognize that the majority of them are not going to college. Well, what can we do to get you ready for the job? And that's definitely something that will be huge for our,
By nature, smaller communities really have to be good at that innovation and creativity, because we have limited budgets and we have limited resources, and you really have to do some
Yeah.
digging in, so that's great.
The 4-day, week,
Yeah.
I know you're tracking like how it's going year by year.
yeah, she does a survey.
Right into the fifth one of using data, like, I don't know that we always have the best quality data for what we do, because I know it's a struggle with some of our stuff, but we're trying at least to like use the data we have and to direct our decisions.
Well, I feel like we're pretty good at reading the data and gathering it. I think our struggle is not really having faith in the data points. Because it gets changed often from the state and other places, so what's recommended is, it's a moving target. Well, and so it's really hard when it's a moving target.
And it's not always that, it's part of it's too that we have such a flex in our student population.
Yes,
And
we
so
have that as
makes-
well.
That
Yes.
also skews the data sometimes.
Yes, it
And
makes
so
it a
we
little
have
more dramatic.
things we have to,
Yes.
things we have to work around, but we try to use what we
But
have.
at least
so.
you're recognizing that they're pulling it from different areas, you're
Yes.
doing different surveys, you have a lot of different things, and that's the important part, is that you're getting data from different areas, not
Yeah.
just one and relying on.
And we're trying to track those students that have been here and stayed here, even though it's not easy, but they're working on compiling all that data so we can really see what the impact of our school is having on the students compared to the fluctuation of their one going, so.
It sounds like you're doing a lot of these areas really well already. Are there any areas of growth that you think you could really start to focus on now that you have some of these things being done now?
I think to go along with what we're doing well by using data, and continuing to figure out how to grow with it, because we can also paint a picture that the data may be why we think we're doing good, maybe not that we're actually doing good, possibly, like, so figuring out how that we can, like, are we convincing ourselves, or are we actually
Looks good on paper.
that? So, like, that's probably the really, really hard piece to try to count on.
And that's part of the reason why I kept on saying, like, it's not just the numbers. You gotta bring in the people who can tell you the stories about what's actually
Yeah.
happening in the classrooms and why we're seeing these new things in the data.
Yeah.
And that's, it's a good combination of trying to get from.
I think, community engagement is definitely still a work in progress. And cultural responsiveness, because it's something that Samantha has brought up, like our neighboring schools district, as well as us have, yes, and so we have tribal students, but the school district, our neighboring school district has holidays off that the tribe honors. And so we're starting to look at that, but that's not something that we are actively doing, but we do bring in, I think we brought in the boys.
Boys with braids.
The drum class.
The tribe came in and did a staff training.
Mm-hmm.
Boys with
Okay,
braids.
so staff training, okay.
Yeah, so But I think we can do a little bit more than that.
I agree.
Well, now that you've kind of had an overview, you have some time to reflect and start thinking about, I think it's something that will continue to want to kind of evaluate in different areas. And you might want to bring that into some of the things that you're doing as a board. When you're setting goals, you might want to think about areas that we need to grow in and that maybe we could consider focusing on. So I just think it's good to have these things so you can kind of, we're not going to do all 12 perfectly. It's something to strive for. But as long as you're kind of thinking about it and you are willing to learn and you're willing to grow, I think that's really important because all of these things together, even if you're doing a few of them really well, are impacting students in positive ways. So we're going to take this into a little bit of practice. We're going to go through a couple scenarios, and I really want to try and keep us on time. So anything else that we don't get to do, I'll just go into the next time. But we are going to practice some scenarios, and just what I want you to do is just kind of think about as we go through each of these scenarios and we're discussing them. I want you to think about maybe the standard that might apply to this, what the board's role is versus the superintendent's role. Is it board work or is it superintendent work? I want you to think about that. And then I also want you to think about the messaging or the communication pathway that might be appropriate for whatever scenarios we're talking about. Because we are going to start talking about communication protocols and things next time. So the first scenario is, all right, an upset staff member who is also a parent approaches you at the grocery store, this never happens, and asks you if you can please help them with a complaint about their child's teacher. Their student's teacher has been assessing or grading them punitively, and the staff member believes it is retaliation for a really tough parent-teacher conference from earlier this year. They mentioned that they've tried connecting with the teacher and they've been unsuccessful, and now they fear retaliation in their own job. So what do you, as a board member, do in this situation?
I feel like this is a conversation you and I have had a decent amount because I
Yeah, I
do
feel
get to
like
be in
you
school,
have-
so I
you
want
have-
a very high
you have-
level, and I understand that, but it makes it a challenge.
I always remind everyone that there is policy in place that we need to follow the order of operations.
Yeah.
And so I hear you. It's really important to make sure people feel heard. And I would like you to go through these channels, and then if it still does nothing and you get nowhere, then you get to the board level. And then what that procedure looks like. But ultimately, I can't do anything about this.
And oftentimes you don't want to because it can get all the way up to the board.
And I usually give Dory a heads up if I
Yeah.
hear something like that.
That's always good. That's
And she may
practice.
never hear anything about it again, but at least she knows that something was said and it might come up.
Sometimes, because this is a staff member who's also a parent who's approaching you, this is an opportunity, how we were talking about how they don't know the board, members. This is an opportunity where you know you can't get involved, but what you can do is you can use this moment of education, because not many people know what the complaint policy is and what that procedure is. And since they've already told you that they talked to the teacher and they weren't successful, the next question may be, were you able to talk to the principal? Okay? And then, I didn't think about that, I didn't know if I wanted to do that, should I just take it to the board? No, I recommend you talk to the principal first, it's kind of part of our policy. And then if things don't work out there, then it's gonna get up to the superintendent, at some point it might get up to us, the board, if you don't get resolved that you're looking for. And sometimes just explaining that gives that empathy, it shows that you're validating that they have concern, but it's also, don't share anymore with me, I already hear it.
Actually, stop.
So let me just talk and let me just tell you what your next steps are, and if you aren't able to get that, I really, just reach out to the superintendent next, okay? I don't want you to think that I don't care, I do care, but I can't care about this right now because in my role as a board, I'm going to have to care about this eventually if it breaks it all the way up to us.
And if it makes it all the way and you share too much, I have to recuse myself.
Correct, and then
And then I'm not a voice at the table even.
Yep, exactly, so. I think it's just important because not many people, even if they've read the policy or they're aware of it, they don't really understand what that means. And sometimes, you already shared that you talked with the teacher, you couldn't talk to them, I would say go to the principal next. And then the principal will be able to direct you if you aren't satisfied there.
It's amazing if you just send in the principal and the teacher the same email, how quickly you'll get a response.
Absolutely. You don't want people doing that and sending
Not right away.
and a board at the same time.
No, not the principal, no.
What would you suggest for situations in which, like, I could refer somebody to administration and to, you know, through the right channels. What would you suggest when it comes to, say, teachers not having faith in going through the right channels? You know, I think there's probably some times, but if they're convinced that nothing's gonna change, why should they go through those steps? And I know that part of that goes with building trust within our relationships, but I can't also be responsible for building trust between them and admin. You know, that's not my responsibility there, so.
Yeah. It's difficult, and it's not gonna be the same for every person. I think it's also an opportunity to make sure that you're talking about these policies and bringing those things back up in public meetings sometimes. Sometimes just refreshing everyone's memory, to be like, oh, we had some people coming up to us and offering us situations, and we just wanna share as a reminder to all staff and parents that if you do find an issue with your, teacher, that this is the proper steps, and just it's come from an education point of view. And eventually, if they start to see that they're getting resolved at the different levels that they're going to, before it makes it up to the board. Sometimes if the superintendent's reporting out that, hey, we have these complaints that kind of come up, it might come to the board, or we've already resolved them. We had several complaints this month. They were able to be resolved at the teacher level, or they were able to be resolved at the principal level. So if you start talking about those things, then you're kind of informing everyone that these things are happening. You're not the only one with these issues. You're not the only one going through the complaint process. And there is some resolve happening. And we're hearing things out in the community. I just want, if you have board comment time, you say, I'm hearing things out in the comment. I just want to make sure, superintendent's aware there might be some things coming down the line. I did direct some people your way. You can say that. You don't have to give details, but, I think it's just a matter of being consistent, builds trust, and constantly communicating and educating everyone saying the same things, then that trust will eventually be there, because they'll start following that process and they'll start getting resolved at whatever level it is, and it won't be all the way to the board. Okay, one more scenario and then we're gonna wrap things up. So a board member posts a question on Facebook that asks for input on a math teacher's behavior.
That doesn't work.
She states that her daughter is upset because of the way the teacher runs the classroom and wants to know if others have the same concerns. She makes herself available for questions by text and email and social media. She goes to the superintendent and shows them the concerns, wanting something to be changed immediately. She also emails other board members for their input. She tells the superintendent that if they do not deal with it, she will bring it up at the next board meeting. So what's going on?
Everything's going on.
Immediate cease and desist, board chair gets involved and reminds them of their job, their duties as a board member, and to remove that.
Unless that's the board chair, then you got a whole other issue.
But does that happen in open public meetings? You recommend in open public meetings, so you can do this?
Well, that's why you have parliamentary procedures, so that you can shut them down.
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, this isn't happening in a meeting. So
They said that they'll bring it up at the next board meeting.
correct.
Right, so if it got to the meeting, you could shut it down, because it's not on the agenda.
And the board chair doesn't have to have a meeting, they can call them, it doesn't have to be a quorum. The board chair could connect with me or whoever, if that's the person who's involved, and immediately shut it down.
A superintendent can get involved in a situation like this as well, and remind that they're out of their lane.
What are some things in this that, when does it become like a public meetings or public records?
When there's 3 board members involved.
When she starts emailing it, that could be considered a meeting.
Especially if they respond.
Absolutely. So be mindful these things are coming in, that you don't want to respond to things like that. Also, the fact that they said, you can text me, email, social media, that you can, give, that's creating a lot of different public records that actually, because you're a board member, anybody who sends anything to you, that's something that's to be disclosed, and you might not know that. So there's a lot of different things going on, but at least they're very concerned about this. Okay, I'm going to wrap up as quickly as I can. So next time we're not going to go over this one. I think we all kind of know this pretty well. We've already had some of these discussions. So next time, we're gonna kind of talk about those board operating agreements, superintendent operating agreements, and communication protocols. I'm gonna be tying some of the learning that we had in here to that in the next session, and then the following session, we're gonna kind of talk about that superintendent evaluation process and your role in it. I just want to make you aware of some tools and resources. If you don't know this already, we do have some things. I'll be sending these to you. It's a placemat. It has all these different essential motions. It has things that you can do to be the best board member on. I don't know if you have this, you've seen it before. It has the 12 standards with effective boardsmanship already listed in here with a description, also some chair and board chair speaking guides that sometimes are helpful. And you can do this for a little while. That probably, but sometimes a refresher is helpful.
I needed this last time.
Yeah, you have to cover, exactly. Sometimes that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Scripts are very helpful. We also have a few resources out there, especially for you, our board members. We did come up with an orientation plan, and the orientation plan really, it kind of breaks down some of the learning that you might want to do and some of the resources that we have that can assist with that learning as you go along. It's a free resource on our website. Have all of you been able to access the OSP and the resources on our portal? You know where our free member resources, these things like that are on there, okay? What this has done is we've actually developed this into a full orientation packet. It's a customizable new board member handbook that we are offering, that if you want to get it, it kind of talks about that plan for the year, and it incorporates where you would find different things, but also why those certain things that you need to know matter. That is available, but also if you don't want to purchase that handbook, if you're interested, we have our Boardsmanship for Beginners. It's a cohort of people who are actually just new board members. And this is an excellent deal because normally it wouldn't be at this price, but we're doing it for $750 because we've already had our annual convention this year. It's just kind of, we have some virtual meetings, we also have some in-person meetings. Basically, you get together with other board members who are also new, and we start going through these planning and trainings and an orientation plan over the next year to 2 years to kind of give you some learning that you need to really know about your position over time. So those are some opportunities I just want to make sure you're aware of, because that first virtual meeting that we're going to have with that new board member cohort is coming up on the 3rd of March. And we do need to have everyone signed up who wants to be in the program by February 27th. If you are familiar with our getting onto the portal and our training and events and stuff like that, I just wanted to kind of make sure you did that. That's our team. If you have any issues, Kristen Miles is our board development director. If you have any other needs for services beyond what you're getting here with your scholarship, I just want to give you an idea of who our team is. And I just want to ask, what do you think for, other than the things that we're going to be talking about later, what is one thing from today's training that you want to think about or reflect on, or what do you want to kind of get out of this series? Like, what's important to you to know with it and with this training series that we're doing together? It's really important for you to have some information on. I know you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah, learning all the things we don't know would be fantastic.
As much as we can cram in a couple of hours, right?
Yeah, just getting it all the way, it's impulsive and it comes to us quickly instead of having to look back at a cheat sheet or something.
Is there anything from the standards that you kind of like has sparked something that you want the board to kind of think about further in the future? I know we had some conversations that we were talking about community engagement, some different ways that you can speak with those kinds of things.
I think the learning organization for me, that I wrote the notes like the board is encouraging reflection, what did you learn, how do you review. We do some of that, but I feel like more is always okay, good.
Continuous improvement.
And I like the piece of continuous improvement is not reactive. And I think we talked about that earlier today.
All right, any other questions before we close up today? I took some notes, I'll be getting some things back and making sure that we kind of tie all this in as we come to our next meetings. But I'm looking forward to that time. If anything comes up, you're like, hey, can you figure out the answer to this question? Burning desire, just feel free to email and I'll try and incorporate that in this one.
Okay.
Find some value in this tonight?
Yeah.
Learn something new? That's
Yes.
At least one new thing. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. So it's 7:39 and the meeting is adjourned.
Wait a minute.
All I know is my kid gets Dallas by 8 and I'm like, okay.
Drive legally.
So I drove the truck.